Now we're officially starting. Welcome to New England Chapter Connects. Today's topic is modern urban forestry practices with technology integration. I want to say happy National Awareness Week to all of you. Happy National Work Zone Awareness Week to all of you. My name is Regina Hackett. I'm the producer for the APWA New England Chapter Connects webinar series, and I'm happy to be here with you today. Our topic for today is modern urban forestry practices with technology integration. This webinar highlights how the town of Westborough's Department of Public Works built a sustainable, data-driven program to manage 30,000 public trees using a sector-based approach. With a small team, they deliver consistent results in tree maintenance, removals, and plantings supported by an ArcGIS forestry suite and innovative strategies like heat mapping and water efficient irrigation. Attendees will gain practical insights into creating efficient and resilient urban tree forestry program. So before we get started officially, I'd like to thank our sponsors for the APWA New England chapter. With their support, we could not bring all of the valuable programs and events to our members and the public works community. All chapter events are made possible because of our generous sponsor support. Their continued investment in our chapter is very important. So thank you so much to our sponsors. And we hope you continue to find the New England Chapter Connect series valuable and informative. Since launching in 2020, to keep our communities connected, our ongoing participation shows the importance of taking time to learn and share ideas together. We're always looking for new ways to bring you meaningful content. So please let us know if there's any future topics you'd like to see in our sessions. This is our second webinar of the 2026 series. We will have one more session in May before our summer break, and we'll return in the fall with additional sessions in September, October, and November. If you missed a session or would like to revisit one with your team, all New England Chapter Connects webinars are available on the chapter website. And lastly, please visit the newenglandapwa.org for more information on becoming an APW member, upcoming New England Chapter Connect sessions, APW conference and events information, or becoming an APWA sponsor. All right, now the fun part. I really want to introduce our speakers today. We have Kyle Grundle, a municipal forestry professional with over 15 years experience advancing technology-driven operations in public works. As forestry division lead for the Westborough Department of Public Works, he has implemented a full digitized GIS-based system managing more than 6,500 public trees, improving field efficiency, risk management, and long-term planning. He previously served as environmental operations manager and tree warden for the city of Framingham, and he integrated GIS and data systems into large-scale environmental and emergency response operations. Kyle's work focuses on bridging field operations with real-time data to deliver smarter, safer, and more sustainable urban forestry programs. Then we have Pam Kavaleski. She's been a GIS administrator for the town of Westborough since 2015. She holds an MA in GIS for development and environment from Clark University, where her studies focus on GIS and remote sensing for natural resource management. Prior to working for the town of Westborough, Pam used GIS experience to perform floodplain mapping for FEMA's Risk Map initiative. And with that, we are going to pass it along to our presenters. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having us, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so with that said, I'm going to share my screen and we will get right into the bulk of it for you guys. As we mentioned, any questions you have, we'll monitor in the chat box. We'll answer at the back end of this. Please bring them up again. We'll try and track them. If we miss it, just let us know. All right, and can everybody see that appropriately?
Oh, yeah, now it's there. Looking good.
Right, great. Perfect. All right, just move this on that way. Yep. All All right, so in order for us to kind of tell you about how we've integrated the technology into our systems, we're going to tell you the full story of our forest department and our DPW and how we've kind of worked together. It's really about the programmatic changes we've made by giving an in-depth overview here. And our technology has really been woven into this to make us more successful, so they go hand in hand. After I go through some of these slides, Pam is going to go into what she's done in combination with us to utilize our GIS systems and really get to our milestones with the DPW. So with that said, we're going to talk about public works modernization and what that looks like for us. So our goal, like every department of public works, is to provide essential services to their community. But how we achieve this can look drastically different from one town to the next, even if we're neighbors. Several years ago, our philosophy shifted to a proactive nature, and we needed a work plan to complement it. We previously had great intent, but we lacked the proper tools to plan, track, and achieve our workload on a manageable basis. This shift has been systematic, and it's brought with it the creation of new maintenance programs, additional employees, new equipment, and a renewed vision for the town's success. And we wanted to talk about what our problems were and how do we overcome them. There's three here that we decided to focus on, and this was how we chose to modernize. This is not only with my division, but with many of the divisions across Public Works, and it started with our director from the top down. So we looked at the problem, and the problem for us was, how do we prioritize our work orders? What's our expected response time internally and externally to our residents? Do we need to implement a system that allows us to efficiently address work orders? Are we getting to all parts of the town, or are we just responding to calls in our hotspots? And then how do we ensure that we are actually seeing all parts of the town? Our solution was we adopted a sector maintenance program. It's based off the watersheds here in town. We have 14, but we brought them down to 10 because it fit the calendar really well, and it also fit the local area. So the design forces us to work in every part of our town systematically, and that's across all divisions. It's broken up into 10 sectors, and we designate 1 week for maintenance in each sector on a repeating basis, and we complete that a total of 4 times per year. Throughout the year and weeks, we have a weekly and monthly meeting so it can keep our teams on track, and we can discuss our base goals off of the seasons, and also each other departments can avoid conflicts and work together. So our outcome, it allows us to track, plan, and perform a range of tasks that are interrelated effectively amongst all our DPW divisions while we're working in the same area. The schedule helps us set those expectations for the public, and all of our teams have easy access to each other if needed. So if when my crew removes a large tree, we can sweep up behind it, or if we're doing certain work and we find that there's a massive pothole or a sinkhole, the other team is close by and we can give them a ring and they can look at it, assess it, and address it as needed to be. And we have the ability to track all of our key metrics in real time now because of this. And that's what one of our dashboards looks like for tracking. So the forestry division restructure. This is really where my career with Westborough begins. And first, I just want to thank our management team, our coworkers, and our town staff. Without their trust and support, none of what we do here will be possible. And these program improvements have made a big difference to everybody that it touches. So when I came onto the town a few years ago, it gave us an opportunity to take a fresh look at how we operate with our forestry operations. And we quickly realized that we needed to make some drastic changes. And it was really so we could keep the urban forest safe and provide the residents with what they needed, and make sure that we were planning for the future for success, because we were really lacking in terms of tree species, canopy coverage, and pests, and we had a lot of work to do. So what we did is we decided to go back to the basics and look at our purpose. The purpose for us is to manage all of our public trees in a cost-effective and efficient manner to manage risk to the town. And that's town-wide across many areas. So we utilize both long and short-term planning that incorporates climate resiliency, and we create a sustainable maintenance plan and division capable of supporting the town's current and future needs so we can successfully manage that forest. And our forest is comprised of both urban and rural areas. So those are combined that we have to figure out. We looked at our requirements. and we defined it. Our requirement definition is to make every DPW asset as reasonably safe from trees as possible. And you can take that sentence and you can switch it over from trees to stormwater, paving, anything else, and make sure that we're being as reasonably competent in what we do as possible. And we integrate that into all of our programs. And that yet again stems from a top-down procedure from our directors. So what we do is we focus on our roadside trimming, our line of sights, and our hazard removals, and they're all performed at the same time in a given work zone. We also consider that every public shade tree will need to be cut back from the right of way. A public shade tree is defined as any tree 20 feet outside the right of way, so it could be privately owned, but it grows into the road, and we have a legal right and responsibility to make sure the road or the sidewalks are clear and passable, and they're safe from hazards to the traveling public. We also look at our public easements, our pump stations, our culverts, our waterways, police station, fire station, any other critical infrastructure is accounted for, and it's considered equally as valuable as our streets. And it forces us to get off the road and look at things that traditionally a DPW might not look at. And then we also figured out that we needed to inventory and track our public shade trees so we can gain a comprehensive understanding of what our urban forest will take to maintain. So as we went through that, we looked at what our capabilities were and what our development needed to be. Our current program, what it offered, and what I thought we needed to be successful. And that came down to looking at assets and staffing and time management skills. So what we did is, with a staff of myself and one other, we completed several roads up to the new standard that we had designated. And then we counted what we had done with the reasons why. So why a tree came out, why a tree needed to be planted, why a tree needed to be pruned, who owned it and what it was. We counted how many removals there were, how many trees were trimmed per road mile, the staffing and the equipment used, the distance we covered, and the time to complete. We all factored this in. And what we found is that our division had the most amount of assets with the least amount of employees dedicated to it. So we were able to take all of that information and then articulate and advocate successfully for ourselves to bring more staff on and equipment so we could take care of what we needed to. We defined that we wanted to trim out our entire town within a 5-year cycle so it could be programmatic, and to get there, what we needed for staffing. And then we also looked at a planting plan. There was not a planting plan here in place when I got here, other than maybe one Arbor Day tree a year. And to do that, we used pilot programs. We compared what a bare root tree looks like versus a ball and burlap tree. We accounted for the installation, the time, the watering. And then we also looked at how many trees we took out to start and figure out, we're removing X, we need to start putting X back in, and what that time frame is going to look like over the course of years and decades. So through that, our level of services increased in quality, but not just in quantity. And that's a key correlation for us, is to make sure both of those go up, because I don't want to just do more and not have it be beneficial to the community. And as we've gone on through the past several years, we've been able to expand and continue to fine tune these forestry programs into what you're about to see. So currently, the trimming and hazard program accounts for most of our forestry operations. Trimming and removals are combined for easy tracking. And you can see that here. This is one of our dashboards that we use. They are sector and priority driven. So when we have a tree that is a high priority hazard that we know we have to take care of, we will leave sector and we'll take care of it, and then we'll come back to it. If it's something that it's just a dead tree, we know we need to get to it, we'll put it into our work order system. And when we get to that sector, we'll be able to track that sector's workload and program that in as it need be. So this is all online. It's all available to the public. It's tracked in real time. So once we do trimming during a day, I update this. Pam and I work on it together, and we make sure that we're current on our fiscal year. And then we put this out to the public so that they can see what we're doing, and then we track internally as well. And it just helps me keep moving forward. So with a crew of me plus 4 total, we remove 732 trees every year. We trim 5,000 trees a year, and we trim up to 13.5 miles of roadway. It's all cut back by hand. And just by tracking it and keeping ourselves scheduled on the calendar, we can effectively get through it. Once we finish this first cycle, we know that what we have to do for the town is going to change, and our workload is going to become easier physically. but it's going to be a shift in much more long-term maintenance with plant healthcare programs and some other things we're going to go into. So what happens with some of our other programs and our dashboards is we can actually effectively target different areas. So when we do our street tree inventory, we can track the health and the species of the trees, and this will allow us to figure out where we need to go and what we're going to be doing. And when we're doing that, we can now say, okay, we know we have X amount of ash trees that are out there in the roadway and they're in this neighborhood and they are high priority. We need to get rid of them. And we can quickly go and take care of that with our crews. If it wasn't for our dashboards and our tracking system, this would not be as easy to do for anybody. It would be relying on one person's data set in their head and trying to pull that out there. So now I can go out there, survey an entire neighborhood or all of our community, and at a quick glance, be able to reference what we have for trees and what our issues are going to be in that area. Throughout that, we have done other things which are newly piloted programs and planting programs. And they're multi-tiered and they're driven by the heat island mapping. So traditionally, most DPWs plant ball and burlap. And that picture in the bottom right, that was our first ball and burlap project here in Westborough. When I was in Framingham, that was mostly what we did. The cost was extreme, the labor was extreme, and the success rate wasn't as good as bare root. So we made a switch to that here in Westborough. In combination with that switch, we looked at the heat island effect, which you can see there on the left. That was provided us by Clark University, and that figures out, all right, we want to target this area and bring that canopy coverage up and cool this area down because that's either Route 9 or our downtown area. That's where most residents are going to be impacted by this. And as we move into the future, we know tree loss is going to be happening more because of different vectors and pests. So how can we combat that and target it? And we actively advocate and plant in those areas. Now, what this looks like for us with our with our bare root planting program is this. It has to be timed specifically. So we start with our planning for our year ahead in the fall. So what you're looking at here is our tree farm. I am ordering these trees in September or October, and they show up in, late April, early March sometimes, and we get them all on the ground here and we kind of heel them in and we figure out where they're going to go. And the way we figure them out is through 3 different programs. And it's either a hydrant planting corridor program, our setback planting program, or they're just our right-of-way street tree plantings that we do with Chapter 90. So our setback planting program is something we kicked off when we got here pretty big. We know we remove a lot of trees. We don't always have the most area to plant trees within the downtown corridor, and watering for us is very hard. We are limited to how many trees we can water with our staffing. So we decided to really push this out there. And I go out like a salesman sometimes and just go door to door and I'll knock on doors and say, hey, you got a prime location for trees. We will do the expensive, hard part of planting it for you. All you got to do is pick what tree you want and where you want it to go, and if it'll fit, we'll make it work. They sign off on this tree. It goes outside of the right of way. The person becomes the owner of it, and they have to be responsible for maintenance and watering down the road. And it ends up being a win-win for us and allows us to put different types of trees we may not be able to do elsewhere. Right. So this was a cost analysis for our bare root and ball and burlap when we first decided what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. The Excel spreadsheet you see was before we started really going with a new hydrant planting corridor. But what we found is when you look at the numbers, the cost of a bare root versus the cost and time of a ball and burlap was pretty significant in how quickly we could do it and how many we could put in and what that workload was going to be. So we made the conscious decision to focus only on bare root. And it was a game changer for us here. It went from planting maybe 6 trees a day to where I can plant 50 trees a day with a small staff. And what we did is we shifted to a hydrant planting corridor in the past couple of years where it's based off of drip line irrigation. We wrote a grant for the state. They gave us $100,000. And it was really a test bed for us. So Pam had looked at open space areas with hydrants and then gave me this list, and I went through it and said, where would we be most successful? And I was able to delineate this and write grants for it, and then focus on our pilot programs and say, okay, in this area, I can put X amount of trees. In the example you see here, we were able to plant 105 trees, all off of drip line irrigation. And what that looks like in the field is this. We bring in a contracted service. He'll come in with a ditch witch after we planted the trees, puts the irrigation in. It goes on a meter off a hydrant with a backflow device. It's all approved by our water department. It meets DEP best management standards, and it's really a win-win for us. And we're the only municipality that we know of that's doing it right now. And for us, it's allowed us to take and change how many trees a person can manage. Before this, I was sending out a staff of 2 people up to 3 times a week in the drought to keep our trees watered. Now it's just myself. I swing by here in the morning with a moisture meter. I check and make sure the trees are what they need to be. And once we have the time of the drip line irrigation system set, it's pretty much set and forget for the season until we have to blow it out. The first pilot program we did looked like this. This is a long video. I'm not going to show all of it, but we planted all those 100+ trees a couple of years ago. And this was with a contracted service to see how it was going to work on large scale. This is about a 1.5-minute video just showing you the different trees going through. If I let that video play, you just see another 50 trees. But what's key about this is this area is really affected by the heat island effect. There's several parks here, a couple of ball fields, and we knew the canopy there was mostly maple trees, and if they were starting to fail. So we knew we had to do something there. So we wrote the grant, put that program into effect, and that was really the jump off point for our new planting programs. And this is what our street tree inventory looks like. So it's all web-based, so we can do it in the field with ArcGIS via field maps. We knew we needed to get better at tracking how many trees we had so we could successfully advocate, but also look at where we were going down the road. The example you see here is one of our beech trees, and this is in our Pine Grove Cemetery. So this is the oldest tree that we know of in the town, and we knew we needed to save some of these by what we're tracking coming up the coast for beech leaf disease. And we said, all right, at a glance, me and my team went out and we surveyed all the trees, put them in there and figured out what's the largest trees, what are publicly owned, what are privately owned, and how are we going to balance this thing that's coming down the road that's going to affect us. And this is just one example of many different things we deal with trees at the DPW. So we deal with beech leaf disease, emerald ash borer beetle, spotted lanternfly, and other things on a lower level that we need to track and maintain. And our dashboards and GIS really allow us to quickly figure out where we need to go and how, and then track it on the back end. So when we found out that beech leaf disease was here and we surveyed the trees we wanted to save, we created a whole program based off of that. We used our local public access TV, which is amazing. We put out a whole video on how you can treat for these trees and what we were doing to preserve them. So this is a 225-year-old beech tree. I'm going to make sure I do everything in my power to keep it going. So we gave them injections, phosphorus treatment. We did a root treatment, and we worked with a contractor to make this happen. By being able to know where the public shade trees that we didn't own in town were, we were able to target those residents and say, hey, you also have a 200-year-old tree on your property. This video is here. There's an option available to you if you so choose. If you want to save this tree, we really advocate that you do because it's an integral part of our community. This is what you can do and how we can work together. And then tree treatments. So what you see here is an overshot of some of the trees we first planted. All of our trees that are planted get at least 1 year of plant health care. So that could be a horticultural oil, a fungicide, anything that we might need to keep that tree going. And then in the fall, we will give that tree a Hep B dose so that way it grows into the next year, and we'll just fertilize it. So we can track all of this now with our field map system. So when our contractor comes in, Pam can highlight quickly and she can blanket 75 trees that they've treated in one day versus us having to send one person to each tree and do the back end data on it. And then it gives me the historical knowledge of knowing what we did with each trees. And if I have failure rates for something, I can say, okay, don't treat the tree with this because it failed when you did it. And maybe do a better treatment here because we saw an increase in vigor. And when we have had that already happen, where I saw 3 different types of trees that were failing after a fertilization, and we said it's burning them up, so let's back it off. And it's just integrating this data at a quick glance to know how we can be effective at our jobs. And then we have our different SOPs. This right here is a quick overview of our Chapter 90. This is our streets and roads paving for some who don't know. I made this SOP and we kind of run our DPW off of these, very militant, and it works well. So we support our Chapter 90 program. What we do is ahead of any paving or paving or milling work, we perform all of our trimming, all of our hazard removals, and all of our data collection. It allows the contractors to work in an efficient manner, and I don't have to worry about them damaging any healthy trees because we've trimmed everything back. We know it's in good shape, and they're going to have the 16 feet of clearance on the roadway to do what they need to with their paving operations. One of our other SOPs is pre-flood mitigation, and this is a huge win for the community. It actually just dropped our flood rating risk for the residents over the last year for their insurance rates. This is a DPW-wide initiative that I'm heavily involved in, and we manage all of our stormwater infrastructure. It's a heavy lift for vegetation management, and many of our assets are either in the woods, they're on wooded easements, and they require extensive mowing and clearing by hand to stay functional. And then flow restoration. This is a break off or a little spoke in the wheel off of that last project. It was born out of our pre-flood program, and what we found was a need to make sure all of our critical waterways were not obstructed by downed trees. So when we perform the work, we walk or we'll float a gas-powered winch out with saws, staff, and other equipments into remote areas. And we'll do this so that during extreme weather events or typical weather events, our infrastructure is safe and clear. And if you look at the picture on your left, you can see a chainsaw with a tree going across the water. But the important thing to focus on is that little brick building you can just see through the brush. That's a sewer pump station. That's one of the workhorses for our town that serves about 30% of our community. If this obstruction was to continue to catch debris like a glove and let that water flow back into that pump station, we would have a serious failure and we would have an SSO. And it would just not be good for the community. So in terms of us getting out for these critical areas, we go out there and do the hard work and just make sure they're maintained. And I can't speak enough to how well it works for us for helping us out community. We also have, and I'll just give you an example. This is what the winch looks like, just pulling a tree out of the water. It's a little 40-pound gas winch. It's very effective. One person can carry it out and get it in and out of the field. It works well. If you don't have one, which many people don't, I would highly suggest getting one and getting trained. It's very dangerous, but this thing does the work of 10 people and it does it quickly. And then through our other flow restoration efforts, we find the weirdest things in the culverts. This is a box culvert and it tapers down as you go into it. We found that this chair had been stuffed into it during a significant event. We crawled in there and we got it out, and I'll play the video so you can see it, but it was pretty violent when this thing came out. But we had to use a portable winch to get that out of there. It was either we would be using the winch or we would be cutting it out. And myself being in that culvert in 20-degree weather, I didn't want to start flying sparks and risk getting cut. So we just dragged it out with that portable winch and made it safe. So some of our other programs are our Public Works Resiliency Week. This is always the last week in March, and we just finished this up not too recently ago. So it's an SOP that further recognizes our municipal vulnerability preparedness or MVP status and devotes an entire week across all DPW divisions. The sole emphasis of this is to ensure that our critical infrastructure is protected during our inclement weather, or to ensure that the infrastructure will remain operable during any adverse situation. So we're not just focusing on weather, but anything that could happen. It could be a vehicle that hits something, Our reservoir is right next to the Mass Pike. So if we can't access our easements and say a Tesla caught on fire and they had to put it out with that new type of chemical, how are we going to get that away from our reservoir and keep that stopped? All of this has been mapped. It's all in GIS, and we're actually working with DOT to put signage out there. So we're taking systems that we've built with Forestry and extrapolating them out further to the DPW in terms of mapping and asset control. And one program influences the other. And, we will inspect during this week our sewer easements, our water supply boundaries. We'll do grease trap inspections, and we'll prioritize what we need to do and how we need to get there. And this is an all hands on deck. And typically we're heavily involved because we have a lot of vegetation that falls on these easements. For an example, the map that you see there is one of our sewer maps. We have 24 miles of cross-country sewer easements. So we're getting out there to see if a tree fell over on one of those things. And if it did it hit a manhole and knock it off? And now we're worried about an SSO and a wetlands. And then as some of the other things that we do here is we do a lot of education and outreach to our schools and public stakeholders. So we'll go in, we write curriculum actively with our teachers. So Mill Pond School is a Tree City campus. We're hosting an Arbor Day with them next week where we plant trees every year. We teach them things about aquifer recharge and how the trees can affect them, what our street tree inventory looks like. We did a species diversification study with Mill Pond School last fall. And we really used the technology to paint a picture for these kids on what the future will look like for them. And it takes maybe some of the climate change issues that even in sixth grade, they're concerned about at high school. And it takes it from a doom and gloom situation to this is what we can do to manage and be effective for our future so that when you guys get bigger and you need something, you'll have it. We also take the time to educate other stakeholders. For me as the tree warden, I'm heavily focused in the field. But if I'm not doing the long-term legwork for my position, we won't be successful. So what that looks like with technology is now we have dashboards. What you can see on the top there is a community that we surveyed for emerald ash borer beetle. And we could see the overall health and the species and the condition and the size of that tree. And we could generate work orders based off of that. And when I could put this out to the public and say, this is what we've surveyed, this is what we found, this is either on your property or ours, we know we need to make it right and we're going to do so. Our planning board, our select board, we can take and quantify data now, and we can do it quite easily and say, we have X amount of trees, this is the size that they are, the species, the useful life cycle of them. We do consider a tree as an asset, just like you would a hydrant or a gate valve or a stormwater catch basin. Every asset has useful life cycle. Ours just happens to be longer lived. It goes away quicker and easier when there's something that kills it off. And it's biological, so it's a different level of maintenance. We put out a lot of videos about what we're doing and why we're doing it so we can drive our residents to them and they can know what we're doing. So whether that's an Arbor Day at the bottom left in the high school where we're planting 30 or 40 trees and we're pulling out invasive species, or what our hazard tree program looks like. We make sure that we use the technology to best advocate for ourselves because in public works, in the municipal sector, if you don't, nobody will. So we want to make sure that we're just telling people what they're getting for their money and being as effective as possible. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Pam, and she's going to take some time to talk about what it's looked like for her on the back end, on the GIS side, for helping us out in the field and what she's been doing.
All right, thank you. Very impressive, Kyle. So I'm going to start with a graphic that kind of just goes over the incremental advances in our asset management over the years. When I started as a part-time employee, we were using ArcGIS desktop, and I was making paper maps for town employees. So we kind of started off slow. We moved on to PeopleGIS in 2018, which provided us with the asset management collection in the field and a work order system for our field staff. At around the 2019 mark, we added in the Leica, one of our two Leica antennas and a number of tablets. And it was kind of a trial run to see if the staff would take it on and use it. And so once we found that there was buy-in, we then moved on to adding a second antenna and some additional tablets. In 2020, we did a flyover with two surrounding towns and obtained orthophotos and planimetric data. And one of the layers was a street tree layer. As you can see in the graphic, it's kind of small, but all that information had was the location of a tree and the attribute of a street tree and the source of the data. So that's what we had for tree data in 2020. Thankfully, Kyle came on board in 2021, and this was significant because we were slow to implement the technology in the various divisions. But when Kyle came in, he had big ideas and a desire to challenge the status quo. With his leadership, Westborough was able to transition from a forestry department with minimal technology to now pushing the boundaries of what we can do with our GIS technology. Additionally, his past experience from working in another municipality gave him the big picture view of how the ideas he had for the forestry department could expand to the DPW as a whole. We then were able to use People GIS's tree inspection form to start capturing data from simply being a location of a tree to now adding in information like tree type, database, DBH, health of the tree, and information like that, which was extremely valuable to Kyle and his work. We moved on in 2023 from People GIS, which was a big jump for us, into the Esri products. And that has really just like shot us into the future for what we can do with GIS and how we can tell a story with the data that we're capturing. We've used it for data collection, data dissemination. We are creating forms for stakeholder input. We have dashboards, we have story maps, and we're going to show you some of that in the next slides. And then the last thing we did was add NEARMAP last year, and that's been extremely helpful in being able to look at land cover change over time. So this is just a screenshot of some of our examples of what we're doing with the Esri products. So the one on the left is his Adopt a Tree form. This is on our website. Someone can go directly to the website and submit a request for a tree, tell us where they want the tree to be on their property. And then this is immediately mapped into a map for him to look at. He also gets an email. It's linked through Power Automate and Microsoft. So he gets an email with a picture and the request sent to him when a submission is submitted. We do have a forestry story map, which has it's a summary of all the different projects that Kyle and I have worked on together. And the QR code is there if you want to look at that. And then the other graphic is just one of our many dashboards that we have created.
So one of the things that kind of jumped us forward in terms of data collection and having what we needed is we got a grant from DCR. I wrote two, we ended up with two. One of them was to inventory all of our trees in our downtown area. It was a census block related grant, and it was a heat map indexed. And we wanted to capture as much data as possible, as quickly as possible, while we were still doing field operations. So we won the bid, or actually we won the grant, and then we put it out to bid to 3 different organizations. And we were very specific on what we wanted. And we knew that we were going to keep the data ourselves. We were going to manage the data ourselves, and we needed very specific data. And what we found out through Pam and I working together is we were almost collecting too much data, or not almost, we were. And it was too much field work to get in the beginning. It was too much for her to manage, and it was not necessary for what we wanted to do and what we needed to do. So we parceled down what we were collecting to the bare minimums, so it would be easier for everybody. And we put that out there. And we ended up giving the bid for the inventory to Planet Geo, and really got what we wanted out of that. And we got a picture of each tree. We got, I think, over 3,200 or 3,500 trees inventoried, which was more than we anticipated. And then we were able to take that, and Pam was able to integrate that into our systems for us.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so this is just a screenshot of what Kyle had just talked about, and he can elaborate a little bit on the request.
So you can see when we requested it, each of those little dots, the color is the type of tree, not the condition for them. So we had to switch that over in the back end. And then we gave them the shape file and we got 3,200 trees out of that. And this is where Pam and I had to work together really quite hard to say, all right, Pam, what do you need from them so that we can put it in the request to make sure that we get what we want on the back end? Because this is a one-shot deal. And Planet Geo was great to work with. They gave us this tree plotter inventory, which was amazing, but it didn't fit our needs because we were using ArcGIS in the back end. But it was awesome for what we got out of it.
Yeah, so this graphic basically explains the process we went through to take the export from Planet Geo as a shapefile with the pictures associated with it, brought it into ArcPro, did some data massage so that we could merge the Planet Geo data with our existing inventoried trees. And then we cleaned that up so that we could put it into iTree and then export the data from iTree to then load into online ArcGIS so that we could then create this dashboard that we're going to show you on the next slide.
And this dashboard for us is very important. As far as we know, we're one of the few or only municipalities that can actually take a tree, inventory it, and then quantify the value of that tree. So we can tell you what the replacement value of that tree would be, what the installation cost will be, the carbon storage of that tree, how many pollutants it removes, the exhaust, the oxygen, and the avoided runoff. And for me, this is important because I can paint a big picture to our community and say, your urban forest is worth X. If we're planning to do a project and we want to remove this area, expect to lose this and expect it to take this long to replicate it. Or if we're tracking a pest or a vector that comes in and is doing a mass kill off of trees, like ash trees, we know what we're going to lose from our canopy and we know what we need to work towards putting back in. And then I can also take some of these numbers and we can give them to our stormwater engineer for MS4 because he can look at what our avoided runoff is. And we can really help paint this picture. So when we plant a new tree in our heat island affected area downtown, we know, okay, this tree right now isn't going to give us many benefits, but in 10 years as it grows or 15 years, we're going to start to see certain eco benefits out of it. And this, for me, early on was very important to have this information. And it took us a long time to get here. And that's why we pushed so hard through that process with Planet Geo. And now we have access to it. Unfortunately, this is based off of iTree, which is no longer receiving funding from the federal government. So I'm hoping that through myself and others, we can advocate this to bring it back because for what this does for free for a community is absolutely incredible. This can be shared from our information to anybody that's on this call and across the whole country. And that's what we really like about Esri is this stuff is so interchangeable. If you like it and you want it, you can have it. And it's a full suite of information.
And then we introduced NEAPWA last year, which was great. We were kind of started off using it for stormwater, looking at stormwater, that's the word I'm looking for, pardon me, new impervious areas for stormwater billing. But what we found is that it was extremely helpful for Kyle to look at change over time. And we noticed that the planning department, the conservation department are excited about using this tool as well. So it's been a huge addition to our technology. And so I'm going to have Kyle elaborate on the next slide about the way that he's been using it in the forestry department.
So when development is built and the developer comes back to the town for road acceptance, I hold myself to a high standard for what I do with our forestry department. And if I'm going to accept trees in development, I want to be able to paint a picture. So to go back on our near map slide, I will show this to a planning board or to a developer and say, okay, at the onset of the project, this is what we had. On the end of the project on the right, this is what it looks like. And we need progress. But with progress, we have to be cognizant of what we're losing for our eco benefits. So when you plant trees and you want to turn them over to us as a town and they're going to be under my maintenance or they're going to be on the open space, we don't want to know what they look like. So this dashboard, we can quickly look at our street tree inventory. And I have already gone in and put all of our boundary markers in here and surveyed these trees for the type, the condition, and the quality. And I can say, okay, Based on what we have 31% is fair, 25% is poor, 6.25% is dead. Those all have to be replaced for me to accept this project. That's not the normal operating standards for a tree warden. I can quantify what's going on in real time, and the select board or the planning board, before they choose to accept this project, can click on this and see, okay, well, we know what's out there and what that site condition truly does look like. And it just goes back to quantification of what's going on in the field and then relating it to long-term planning.
Okay, I'm going to kind of breeze through these because I think we're coming to the end of this presentation. But essentially, over the last 10 years, we've gone through a couple of different work order dispatching tools. We started with People GIS, and then we moved on to Workforce and the Esri suite of tools. But now that that is being phased out, we've since moved to Tasks, which is embedded into field maps, and we're building out our own instant apps to do the dispatching for the people, dispatchers and the field staff. And so this is a quick screenshot of what that looks like. So right now we have the actual tasks in field maps. It used to be in Workforce, which meant that the staff had to go to multiple different apps just to do their job. Now this resides right in field maps, where they're also doing their asset mapping and data collection, where they can capture pictures of trees, they can update the health of a tree in the field on the fly. Additionally, we have it set up so that we can do offline mapping when Kyle knows he's going to be in an area that doesn't have very good service. He can map his data offline and then upload it later when he's back in the office. Another thing we did was we took the task tracking and we created a dashboard so that Kyle can go in. He can look at, what is the priority that he has to do for the day? Where is all his tree trimming? He can filter that out. He can filter out what the most recent addition to his tracker is. So it allows him to really query out the information that he wants. And as you can see, you can do it across the other divisions as well. Another example of using the different tools and using them across divisions is when Kyle took the Leica pole, he went out into the field to a cemetery that is going to go online in a few months. He went out, he mapped the cemetery lot pins initially, then he mapped out where his proposed trees would be. And then after that, went in and planted the trees. And so that is now the basis of a cemetery plan that we have. It's about to go online. I'm working with the cemetery department to map out some other things, and eventually it's going to be one of the Esri solutions, cemetery management plan solutions that we're going to use. And I think on the last slide is our mission brief. So this was 100% Kyle's doing. We built this in Survey 123 on the right. He initiated the creation of a job hazard assessment form for the Forestry Department that was then adapted into a division-wide tool that is used daily by the DPW. What this does is it allows for the DPW director to take a glance at is someone going in? Are they setting the tone for the day, leading the expectations for the day, and then he knows what's being done. The DPW director knows what's being done. And it also provides a historical record for OSHA, DLS, or any other outside organizations. We're doing other types of customizable forms for other departments. We have a confined space form that the sewer department had me build. We have a sign inventory for the highway department. So Survey 123 has been great at allowing us to build out customized forms for various departments across DPW. And that's it.
So that's the last of our slides and what we have. I'm going to leave this up if you want to take a shot of the QR code. It'll bring you to our website. And then I'll stop sharing in a few seconds here, and we'll open it up to any questions you guys have and run through them for you.
Sorry, we did get some questions in the chat box. If we can just like start addressing those.
Okay.
Nick Haggerty asked, do you have recommendations for municipalities with limited in-house GIS availability, or are you able to estimate cost savings efficiency from having these GIS tools and resources? It's been difficult here to ask for new programs, tools due to budget challenges. And just Colchester is a small town in Connecticut.
Certainly, yeah, that's a tough one. We're fortunate here. Westborough is a medium-sized community with a decent budget. So that's allowed us to ask for things as we get. The town that I live in personally doesn't have a budget for any GIS tools, and I volunteer for them. And it's frustrating because I do this during the day and I don't have it to volunteer with them. The best thing I could say is start small and show what the capabilities are, whether it's People's GIS or another app or whatever it may be. Show what you can do with the technology and do it. And then you can advocate and build small, because we didn't just get here all at once. Everything you've seen has been a culmination of years of work. And that would really be the best thing that I would say. And I know we in Massachusetts have something in our area called the Central Mass Regioning Planning Coalition, where they do GIS for free or for a low cost to municipalities. If you have something like that close to you, that might be a good resource to reach out to and say, hey, I want to get GIS work done. I need to advocate for it. Maybe you can help me set the standard, and then we can go and we can advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, and I would say too, even starting off with maybe like a few licenses, online licenses, will really get you started, and then you can decide how can we build that out. I think that's a good place to start, is just trying to get your hands on a few licenses, creating a little bit of content, and then showing the possibility. Because that's essentially what we did. We started with just a few licenses, and then as we saw that we were using it and that people were seeing the value in it, then we would purchase more licenses.
Thank you.
Okay, and then William asked, is the DPW buying the trees for your Adopt a Tree program?
Yes, we are. We have a rough budget of about $10,000 to $12,000 a year for tree plantings. Massachusetts has written it into state law that you can legally spend tax money to put trees on private property. It's one of the only times that I know about it. It's very rare. I sit on the Mass Tree Wardens Board, and we advocate for those things. And that has been in the mass legislation for an extremely long time. But as part of our necessity to remove trees, we are responsible to put something back in, and we look at both of those as equals.
Okay, and then just a comment. Christy actually has been really excited about this presentation. She said, wow, and this is absolutely what so many municipalities have been needing for so long. Just incredible. I just want to echo that. It's been a great presentation. And then we have Joe, who asked, how much participation do you receive on your Adopt a Tree program? When you do go door knocking to prime tree locations, what is the general response that you receive when you say the maintenance of the trees will be the homeowner's responsibility?
So, full clarity, I used to sell cars, and I take the same mentality to selling trees to residents. I bring a tablet with me. I articulate why we're doing what we're doing and the benefit to them. The take rate ends up being 80%. And most of the people that don't want a tree will say, I love trees, but I don't want a tree here. Can we put it somewhere else? And that's just the nature of the beast. People think of trees as messy, a high cost, and something that they don't want to have, but they know they need to have. So it's a sell, but when I get people to sign up, I usually get a good amount of it. And we also advocate at our environmental fair. I take a Saturday when the whole town comes, and it's the high school does it, the middle school does it. They do an electric vehicle fair. Everybody is there from the community, and I'll go and I'll put up a TV and I'll advocate and I'll try and get people to sign up. And now I have contact at the Rotary Club, at the Community Land Trust, at the Garden Trust, and they advocate for us as well.
Okay, and then Joe just had a follow-up question. How do overhead or buried utility lines affect where you can place trees?
Yep. So as part of that program, we will do a dig safe. And if you look at our dashboard, it will say submitted pending, approved, completed. So when it's pending, we're waiting for the dig safe to come through. I'll do a survey and see what's underground. If it's not a compatible location, we'll move the tree and try and find a suitable place on that property. But we do right tree, right place planting here.
Okay. And if anyone has any last questions before we say goodbye, you can actually unmute yourself if you like. I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you can, please scan the QR code or hit the link in the chat box, just so we can get some of your feedback regarding this webinar and future possible topics. And everyone's saying thank you for your time, sharing incredible work. Kyle and Pam, thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it. So,
Thanks, everybody.
all right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, guys.